Hey guys, Scott Patton here. This is my top picks for the month of December. It's been pretty mild until probably right before Thanksgiving's, and we had some cold weather come through. A lot of 5, 27, 30 degree nights and stuff like that. Highs mid 40s, upper 40s, and just a little bit into the 50s. So it's really cooled the water off a lot in the last 10 days. And we're really going into winter, the first stage of winter. There's several baits that you can catch fish on this time of year. I will still fish pretty shallow in the month of December. Just because you may go out there after these cold fronts and stuff like that, it may get down 27 degrees, and you go out and you'll see the water temperatures down to say 45, even 47. Normally that's the first, foot to 20 inches of the upper layer of the surface, and that's where you're getting your reading from on your boat. So that water down there around, 5, 6 foot deep, it's not going to be that cold. It may still, the water temperature is still going to be around 60, upper 50s and stuff like that. So you got to consider that and keep that in mind when you're fishing this time of year. And don't let that real cold, unless your fish have been in that real shallow water, your 1-2 foot range, and of course, that bait's going to move, and those fish are going to move out, into that 5-6 foot range. So, like I say, just keep that stuff in mind. If you got warming trends, which right now I'm keep watching Weather Channel because I want to get back on the water myself for that, and we really don't have nothing. We basically got 47 to 50 degree days and 27 to 30 degree nights for the next 10 days. So that is going to cool the water down overall into those deeper depths. So, that's, and these baits that I've got picked out are going to be the ones I'm going to use for this time of year, you guys. So we'll jump into this, and I guess I'm going to start out with, probably their number one wintertime bait is going to be a rig. I've got this wrapped up on this thing. And just to show y'all, and the reason I left this on here like this, just to give y'all a little tip on, storing this and, keeping it in your rod box, and also, even having it laid down, and, when you're taking out a bunch of rods like I do, and it keeps it from being tangled up. All I've done, you guys, is I've got a piece of Velcro that is long enough to wrap around this thing. And, I just, like I said, you can see how that is. And this is something I figured out years ago, guys, because I have 3 or 4 of these things rigged up for customers. I'll just take that piece of Velcro off. Then I, of course, have to spread out these baits and stuff on my A-rig. These are some that I'll put together that I had a guy a long time ago give me the bodies that he poured, and I put my own blades and stuff like that. I like smaller blades on my A-rigs. It seems like to me they get more bites. I know there's all kinds of different A-rigs out there on the market that you can buy. This one's pretty simple. And what I've got is, in Tennessee, we're allowed 3 hooks on a bait. You can put as many dummies on there as you want, but because these were already poured up with 5, of course, I got 2 dummies on there. And what I'm calling a dummy, you guys, in case you're not familiar with the bait, is they don't have hooks in them, okay? But it still gives me the presence of a ball bait in the water when these fish are out there and they see these things, and they'll jump up there and eat that thing. So, and one key with doing that, some states you can use 5 hooks, and some, 3. I ain't for sure all the regulations across the whole country. But what I do, though, is I'll rig these things, the 2 dummies up with no hooks or no lead heads, okay? Because I want them to stay on top of that rig what's going through the water like that, guys. So I'll rig the 3 with the weight, because that weight's going to balance that thing down and let that thing run through the water column that way. That way, when the fish comes up from underneath it, he's more likely going to hit one of those 3 baits with a hook in it, and you're going to catch that fish. So, of course, you don't want to rig up your dummies with, I don't use weights on them at all. If I need it to go heavier, I'll go to, like these are 1/8 ounce heads on here. If I need it to be heavier than that, I'll go 1/4 ounce. If I need it getting deeper in the water column, I'll rig these 3 up with heavier weights just to get it down where the depth where them fish may be, or how deep I need this A-rig to be in order to get those fish to come up. Because as it gets colder and colder, them fish are going to get deeper and deeper, and you will have to keep that, you may have to keep that bait in 8, 9, 10, 12 foot of water, and that's where I'll go with the heavier heads. But right now, I'm throwing this thing up in probably about 2 foot of water up on these flats in these ditches and stuff, and swimming it off from there. And those fish are sitting in about that 5, 6, 7 to 10 foot range. And I can keep this bait in that range without getting hung up on stumps or anything else that may be in that given area. So hopefully you can see that. Hopefully that'll help you guys out with your A-rig. You can go with different size baits. You know, these are, I think, 3 inches, 2.5, but you can even go smaller than that. I got another swim bait that we're going to get into that I throw singly. But again, you can, depending on the lake you're fishing, you guys, you can go to bigger baits or you can go to smaller baits, okay? So if you're fishing a lake that doesn't have a lot of big fish, don't have a lot of big bait in it, you may want to go to even smaller baits than what I've got rigged up here. Keep that in mind too, you guys, okay? And I throw this on my PAL flipping stick. I got a 25-pound test Seagull fluorocarbon. And I almost always throw it on fluorocarbon. Every once in a while I throw it on braid, but most of the time I will throw it on fluorocarbon, 25-pound test line. That way if it gets hung, I can pull it free, or if I get a giant fish on, I feel like I can get him to the boat, guys. All right. But again, guys, you know, to close this thing up, I would just take and hold that down just like that. And I'll take my Velcro, hold that on there, just wrap that around there, you guys. You want that Velcro long enough where it's going to wrap so it won't come off there or pop loose. See what I've got right there? Then I'll just take the bait. I ain't got much room in here. Hitting the wall. Just hook it up there just like that. But that's the best way to store these things, and to me, it is anyways, guys. You may have some other ideals, but that's the way I do mine. Hopefully, you guys might like that ideal and use it yourself. So we'll put that over there out of the way. So the next bait that I'm going to go with, of course, is going to be a jerk bait. And this is probably going to be a bait you want to keep on all winter long. I throw different ones, different sizes. I throw different, different brands and stuff, everything, guys. This old clown color, like, this used to be one of the main colors out there that guys fish with, 20 years ago. But a lot of you guys may not have been fishing that long. But if any of you have, that old clown color, it'll flat out catch them. I still throw it, and I still catch a lot of fish on it. Y'all go to more translucent colors and stuff like that on the clearer days. I'll go through more, shad patterns and stuff like that. But a jerk bait is something you have to keep tight on. And I always like that 610 PAL rod to throw. I like that little bit shorter handle on that rod, and I like the shorter rod. That way, when I'm jerking it, it's not as much stress if I have to hold it sideways and jerk it. I can jerk it more down, so I'm using gravity with my rod tip and the motion of going jerking it up and down. Now, as far as how you retrieve that bait, that's one of the things you're going to have to play with, you guys out there. I've had days to where you want to just jerk that thing all the way back to the boat. Not crazy, but you may want to keep consistent jerks on it, and that'll make create the strike. And there's times where I may jerk it 2 or 3 times, let it pause. And the colder the water gets, the longer you're going to let that thing pause, because those fish are cold-blooded creatures. If that water temperature is 47 degrees, their body is operating at 47 degrees. So you got to keep that in mind, guys. So the colder water gets, the slower you want to fish your baits. And a jerk bait, that's why one reason a jerk bait is so good in the wintertime versus any other bait on the market, because you can jerk it, suspends, it'll stay right there in one spot. Hardly any other bait on the market even do that. So wintertime jerk baits, I'm not going to say one brand is better than the others. I use many different brands. They all have different actions. They got different colors and stuff like that, different sizes. And I always keep a variety of them in the boat. I don't care if I'm fishing in Florida in the wintertime, or if I'm fishing, if I was fishing here in Tennessee in the wintertime. I'm going to try to see which bait, which color, what size of jerk bait that's going to make those fish react out of. And trust me, there's times it makes a difference. And also the correct retrieve. So you just got to do the work, you guys. It's just, the fish just ain't going to jump on there just because you want to catch them. You got to figure out what it's going to make in order to make those fish strike, okay? And again, a jerk bait is probably the best wintertime bait there is. All right, so we're going to move on to the next one. It's a bait that I've been doing some videos on here lately, and it's been producing really well for me. And I love fishing it. I love the bite when the fish hits this bait, and that's a vibrating bait, you guys. Again, as the water gets, I've been throwing a lot of shad patterns and stuff. As the water gets colder, I'll go into more of the crawfish colors, even the reds and stuff. I'll still throw my shad patterns, okay? You don't want to lay them down. I'll still throw my shad patterns and stuff, but you've got to, again, you got to experiment and see what color it's going to get in order to get those fish to react on them. Now, as far as the crawfish colors, the more I go into as the water gets colder and stuff like that, as the water gets colder and stuff, I'll change my retrieve on these baits, because what I'll do a lot of times is the crawfish colors and stuff, you're going to try to make that thing resemble like a crawfish. A lot of times I'll throw that thing out there and I'll let that thing just bounce in that gravel bank, you guys, okay? So if I'm fishing pea gravel or any kind of gravel or chunk rocks and stuff like that, I want that bait banging into those rocks because it looks like a crawfish, okay? Another technique would be throwing out there and almost be fishing like a jig off from a long tapering point and stuff like that, going out to the main lake. Is I'll throw that thing out there, I'll let it fall to the bottom, I'll jerk it up, let it fall, jerk it up, let it fall. It just like a crawfish jumping off the bottom, and that vibrating sound and the noise of the rattles of these things will attract that bite, and you'll catch a lot of fish doing that this time of year and as we go on to the later part of December. So your vibrating baits is going to be a great thing to be using, and it's a bait you definitely want to keep tight on. I will normally throw this on 15 to 17 pound line. You can still get plenty of action out of 17 pound test fluorocarbon. I like a 7-3 pound rod, and the reason I like a little bit longer rod is because when these fish hit this bait, a lot of times they can charge at the boat. I need that longer rod in order to keep that line tight and get the fish where I can catch up with him if he charges towards the boat. Because a lot of times you may get that bite in 3-4 foot of water. He's not going to run shallower towards the bank. He's going towards you, towards deeper water where he thinks safety is. And so that longer rod is going to make a big difference. And again, the 17 pound test line, I like that because that way if I get hung up on a rock or something like that, I can do the old bow and arrow trick, pop that thing loose. So, your vibrating baits, don't throw them out there and fish them straight in. I'll start fishing that and the jerk bait, you guys. I'll start tending to go into bluff walls and stuff like that, the ends of bluff walls where they go into the flats and stuff like that. Because a lot of times these fish will winter on lakes that's got bluff walls. They'll winter on these deeper bluff walls. That way, when it gets real cold and stays cold for a week or so, they'll be down deeper, but it's easier for them to come up when we have a warmer trend for 3 or 4 or 5 warm days. They can move up and get a little bit more that more comfortable zone, and they'll feed in those areas, okay? I've seen that even on lakes like Kentucky Lake, Chickamauga, any of these Tennessee River lakes. You'll have a river channel that swings in next to a bank. It may not be a bluff wall there because those bluff walls just don't, like Kentucky Lake is a great place for that. A bluff wall will run right next to a bank like that. So those fish in that river may run down, or it may run down 50 to 100 yards or more. So those fish, I've seen them use those type of areas all winter long. And your jerk bait, your vibrating baits, and all these baits I'm talking about, that's a lot of places you may find those fish, okay? And a lot of guys won't fish that kind of stuff because it's not a bluff wall. Okay, but there's shell beds and stuff like that going off, where it comes off the flat and starts going into that steeper bank. There's shell beds and stuff like that on there, and you find those shell beds. It's usually when the fish going to set when they're not actively hunting. But you take your time. You decide, use your side scan, your active target. You can find these areas, and you'll be able to sit there and just catch. Because this time of year, these fish are really going to be balled up and be in real good schools, and you have some really great days as long as you don't mind dealing with the colder weather. All right, guys, another bait that I keep tied on through December. Now, as I get into January and February, I may not have it tied on as much. It's going to be my glide baits. This is one of a buddy of mine, Jeremy Farmer makes, and I have his information on there. He hand paints these things. He hand makes these things. These are all made right here in Tennessee. Fantastic bait. I love this thing. It's got great action. It'll suspend. He's got that bait weighted just great for fishing in that 3 to 8 foot range, because you can put bigger hooks on it if you want it to sink real slow, or if you like I got these hooks right here. This bait will just glide, and it will stop. It will not move. It's perfect. I love it, and we've been catching a lot of big fish on it. I know Jerry's been catching a lot of big fish on it too, and some of his buddies. But you definitely want to keep that glide bait on. This is a 7-inch glide bait. It's a great size, you guys, for catching even 2-pounders. You'll catch a pound bass on this thing, I'm telling you, or you can catch a 7-pounder. pounder on it. So I'm throwing this thing on 25-pound test. Seaguar fluorocarbon is what I'm throwing, and I'm throwing on like a 7.4, 7.5 rod, because they're fairly heavy, and you want something that you can cast it where you can control your cast, where your bait's not going to control and go out of control when you do cast it. So you got to have a rod heavy enough to control this bait when you're casting it, you guys. Keep it tied on through the whole month, on these warmer trend days and stuff like that. And right now, because the water's not got real cold just yet, we've been catching a lot of good fish on them, catching a lot of numbers of fish on them. Even had some double. I know Jeremy and some of his friends have had some doubles and stuff on them. So keep that glide bait on. For Jeremy's glide bait, we're going to have his information attached in here, you guys, so you can contact him directly and get you some of these. Another bait that I will throw a lot for, like, even on Bluff Falls, fish are suspended here in Tennessee River. These fish are suspended off these ledges, off that main river channel and stuff like that. In December is another good month for it. Those fish may be suspended in 15, 20, 20 foot of water often, or they may not be actively feeding or chasing bait like that. So a jig and spoon is definitely an old school bait. It's something I always throw in the wintertime. I think those old Hopkins jig and spoon here in the gold. This thing's about 1.5 to 1.75 inches long. That's about the size I'll use this time of year, because there's a lot of small bait out there from this year's hatch, and they're usually around the 1.5 to 2 inch long. So that size right there really duplicates that. If you're seeing balls of bait and stuff out there, you see fish around there by them, take that jig and spoon, you guys. It's real easy to fish. I usually throw it on either 12 or 15-pound test line. I don't want to go too heavy with it, because it seems like if I go too heavy a line, even though that seemed like a heavy bait, when it's fluttering down, it kind of interferes with the fluttering action, and you want real good fluttering action out of it. And that's where the 12 to 15-pound test line, it doesn't override that bait as that line's falling down in the water. It lets it fall more freer, and it makes it flash and dance around a lot more in order to attract those fish. But a jig and spoon, something, if you haven't used it, you guys, I'm sure there's plenty of videos on here you can watch. And I know it's a bait that a lot of times these fish are just not seeing, because there's so many different new baits and stuff out there these guys are fishing for these suspended fish with. But a jig and spoon is something you want to use. We've been using it for years, and it's something that's going to catch you a lot of wintertime bass. And if you guys love to catch stripers or white bass this time of year, that old spoon will sure do that too for you. Load them up and have you a good dinner with them. I got a few more baits. Another old-time great bait that I would throw all winter long until the spring is the old shad wrap, you guys. The number 5 shad wrap. I tell you what, these things will flat out catch a lot of fish for you. I like this bait here. I can fish it real slow. I normally throw it on a spinning tackle. I do have these number 5s weighted enough to where I can throw it on like 12-pound test line on a bait caster. You don't want too stiff a rod when you're doing that. You want a rod with like a little action to it. I like that PAL 705. It's got enough tip into it. I can throw this bait with her on a 12-pound test line. Or if you're not comfortable or not used to throwing it, you can always throw these things on spinning rod. Use braid with like a 10-pound or 12-pound test fluorocarbon leader on it. I would probably throw it on like 20-pound braid, and then tie on a 10-pound fluorocarbon leader. Tie you along a long enough leader, you guys, because you want this bait to get down there. It'll run 4, 5, 6 foot deep, depending on how much you have it weighted. I use suspend dots. It's just lead tape, you guys. I'll have her show a close-up on that. But I use suspend dots. So you put 5 of those suspend dots on there, and I stack them on top of each other, and I put them right on that throat of that bait. That bait will suspend perfectly in the water. It won't sink, it won't rise, and 5 of them works perfect. And of course, if you put too big with hooks on it, that's going to change it too. So you may have to go to 4, and if you're keeping the originals, I've changed them, almost always change the hooks out on these. I put at least 1 size up. I ain't for sure what size I got on here, you guys, but you can see they're a little bit bigger. I think I've got one here with stock hooks on it, so I'll have her show you a picture of that too. But suspending these baits is a big key to them. This is a custom painted one. That's not stock. I've had that painted. That's a chartreuse root beer color that I've had a guy paint up for me years ago. Fantastic, and some stained water and stuff like that. I'll catch fish on that thing all winter long. The old crawfish pattern is another real good one, you guys. You know, I'm throwing this on bluff walls, the end of bluff walls, gravel points and stuff like that. Any kind of ditch that may run into out on a flat on the main lake that dump into the main river channel. It's a great place to throw them. And this is another custom color, more of a shad pattern that we got tied up, and it's a fantastic color too. But I'll do another video later on about shad wraps, because you know, it's really a fantastic wintertime bait. You know, years ago I used to be sponsored by Rapala, and I've got abundance of them from then, but I've always loved that bait, and it's a great bait and one of the best baits ever been made. I remember when those things first came out, it was unbelievable. Those fish would just chase that bait down like crazy. You couldn't even get your hands on them. But anyways, we'll save that for later. Two more baits to go through, you guys, and I'll let you get off from here. But, you know, in December, you can catch a lot of big fish. A lot of real nice fish, 4 or 5 pound, 7, 8, 9 pound fish. And a jig is going to be one of those things that you're going to use a lot to do it on. Now, normally this works best, you guys, if fishing on bluff walls, the end of bluff walls and stuff like that, any of them that may have lay downs as a bottom, because a lot of the times those big fish will lay on those ends of those flats with that bluff wall where it's going to start tapering out right there before it's going on to the flat. You have to look at your map on there. You can watch the contour lines on your C map and stuff, you guys. But anywhere on that bluff wall, you can get bit. If some of these walls may be several hundred yards long, some of them may be 50 yards long. But you just have to go in there and you flip them. What I usually do, I use my PAL flipping stick with 25 or 20 pound test seagull fluorocarbon on it, and I'll be going down and flipping any kind of cover. I'll get it tight on that wall and let it just fall straight down. A lot of times you got to feed it line. You want to keep it tight to that bluff once it falls down there, because if you don't, then all your bait's going to do is when you flip it against that wall, it's just going to pull out away from it as it falls. So it's important. A lot of times I'll keep my line, my butt pushed on my reel. I keep it unengaged. That way I can feed it line as it falls down through there. I'm trying to keep that jig as tight as I can to that bluff wall, because it's going to get you a whole lot more bites. And if you're not doing that, you got to pay attention to it. Sometimes those fish may be 10, 12 foot deep, but a big jig is something I throw. As you can see, I got big, I laid this out here, just something I've done for years too. Right. I like using a big jig trailer on my jig this time of year, guys. This is Zoom's big salty chunk, old school. They've been making this thing forever, for years. I have her show that on there, but you can see it gives that bait a big profile. I'm trying to get bigger bites with this bait, you guys. I'm like saying 3.5, 4 pound, 5 pound fish. Even those 8, 9 pound fish too. They're going to want a bigger bait this time of year, and that big bulky jig is one bait that you can definitely catch fish on. It's natural looking, it looks like a crawfish that's falling down in the water, you guys. But if you're not fishing this bait, get you some of those big trailers. And another good thing is a lot of guys ain't fishing it. I hate him and putting this out there, because I've been using this thing forever, and I've done well over the years with it. So I've been fishing this thing. I started bass fishing when I was, probably about 14, 15 years old. And I started fishing this bait probably when I was in my early 20s, and I'm 63 now, so I've been fishing that thing for over 40 years, and still catch nice quality fish with it, you guys. So 3/8 or half ounce Strike King jig with that big Zoom chunk on there will definitely catch you some quality fish this time of year. All right, probably last bait I'm going to show you guys is something that's real simple, and I've talked to a lot of guys while I'm guiding, stuff like that, and a lot of guys know this, but a lot of you guys probably ain't going to know this little deal. But anyways, it's just throwing a small swim bait. This is a 2.5 little high-tech swim bait. This is a smallmouth magic color. I've got it on a little 1/8 ounce head. This head is one of Z-Man's finesse heads. I've got a lot of different heads and brands and stuff like that, because some of them, this got a fairly good size hook in it. You can get something that's got a little bit smaller hook in it, and those little 1/8 ounce and 1/4 ounce sizes and stuff like that. But what I'm going to do with that, another color real fast, guys, is this chartreuse, blue and chartreuse one, and a little bit of stained water. I've done real good with it this time of year too, in the month of December. But you're just going to put that on your spinning reel. I'm going to throw it on a 15 or 20 pound braid, and probably about 10 or 12 pound tests, fluorocarbon tied onto it. Again, you don't want to go too big on your fluorocarbon line, you guys, with this, because the bulkiness of that line, and in the wintertime, water is thicker than it is in the summertime, okay? So it's going to put too much it's going to put too much pull on that weight of this little bitty 1/8 ounce jig head. So you don't want your line to override the weight of your jig head and kill the action of your bait. That's why you want to go with 10 or 12 pound tests. And I really recommend 10. You're going to have a lot more action out of this bait. You're going to just throw it out there and just going to slow reel it back. You can twitch it. Just twitch it some. Keep your drag set. You want to keep an eye on that drag, because this bait right here will catch a daggone 10-incher, or it'll catch a daggone 10-pounder. So you want to make sure, if you're fishing this bait, and you can definitely fish this thing year round, it's a fantastic bait. And just throw it out there and reel it, just reel it back real slow as it swims back. Another good way to fish it is throwing it up on bluff walls. And had it thrown up there, and I had some buddies of mine show me this years ago. They're from Cherokee Lake and stuff like that, where they do this a lot. But anyways, you throw it up there on that spinning reel, let that thing fall, and as you're on these bluff walls, and those bluff walls usually have rocks or can stair step down, but they'll actually throw it up there and almost fish it like a jig, instead of a swim bait. You'll pull it, let it fall, pull it, let it fall. Just let it walk down that bank like that, guys. And if you fish for smallmouth, it's a fantastic smallmouth and spotted bass lure, but you're going to catch plenty of largemouth with it. But anyways, guys, that pretty much covers everything. Me and my wife's about to head to Okeechobee for the winter. We're going to be down there January, February, and March. If you're wanting to book a guide trip down there in Big O, we have a great time doing artificials. We do wild chiners, live bait down there. We're out of Roland Martin's Marina. They've redone the whole lodge, you guys, updated everything in it. They've done a fantastic job. So if you want a place to stay and have a good time to eat, they got a tiki bar out back. But we're going to be going down there here soon after Christmas. And if you want to do an Okeechobee trip, you guys, you target this cold weather, you get down there, give me a shout. We'll get you hooked up, and we'll get you on the water and catch you some good fish down there. But hey, I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate all you that subscribe for me too. It means a lot. Let me know how you guys are doing. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving, and Christmas are coming up here in a few weeks. But anyways, we'll have some more videos out before then, you guys. I appreciate it. Good fishing to you. And if you see me on the water, give me a shout. Thanks.